Spending a lot of time at home has reminded me a lot about spending a lot of time at home.
Long, bright and sunny summer and sick days spent entirely inside in front of the television watching cartoons. Old cartoons. Cartoons that were rerunning long before I'd ever even had my own series premiere. In its glory days, Boomerang was a network that played classic cartoons with no commercials, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A network branded by and so inherently tied to nostalgia, its slogan was, "It's all coming back to you." Like a boomerang. It's what they do. The sad thing is that this boomerang that once was, now isn't. And in its absence, I find myself feeling nostalgic for the identity of a network predicated on fulfilling nostalgic longings for Gen Xers indulging of cartoons that their baby boomer parents showed them. Ever since Boomerang changed, like many other people trapped between two generations without fully understanding or relating to either, I've been feeling hopelessly nostalgic for nostalgia. Oh, and don't worry. I assure you I'll say the word nostalgia so much in this video that it will lose all its meaning for you. Nostalgia. Nostalgia. Just gives me a real nostalgic feeling for some reason. I mean, cathartic, I think. English is subjective too. Here's the thing though. I feel like the nostalgia of the network is just a theme. What it gives through that is what's great. It's like, oh, the History Channel isn't just great because it's a channel about history. It's great because it's a channel about history that also plays Pawn Stars marathons all day. But Boomerang wasn't just the Flintstones over and over again. It was the perfect combination of elements. Programming, bumpers, blocking, television magic that made you feel like you were participating in something special. Something that stretched across the entire country that you shared with everyone else watching at the same time, but while also being a comfy hug that was just for you. Boomerang as a network remained more or less unchanged for over a decade. And tuning into it always made me feel like I was grounding myself in a moment, like no matter how much my life or the world changed around me, I was able to remember where and who I was by watching the same episodes of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo over and over again, surrounded by those little toy bumpers that always made you feel like you were staying home from school. It didn't matter if all the network was going to do was air a weird marathon of The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan all summer. The quality of the programming weirdly was not important to the feeling Boomerang was always capable of giving to you. It was the consistent thematic coziness of it all.
Now things are beginning to make a little sense.
Back in high school, especially during the summers, I would just stay up all night with Boomerang. Usually we'll also like Skyping with friends, but Boomerang would remain my constant background noise. It just felt like it marked down each and every memory for me, so they'd always come back to me. Like staying up all night with my friend Alex while we wrote and recorded a cover of Hooked on a Feeling as Randy Newman, Strong Bad, and Skeletor. I assure you that the Flintstones was airing while we recorded that. Or at least that Hoagie Carmichael bumper that would play on like every break at 3 a.m. So please, don't misunderstand what I'm placing Boomerang's importance on. I'm not saying TV shows being made now are bad or that the cartoons that I grew up with and predated my life are somehow better than anything being made now. That somehow shows with names like Dan Aykroyd and the Fuzzy Car Barterers or The Adventures of the Winged Hippo Youngsters are high-class animation that far surpasses new shows as far as creative integrity goes. That would be willful ignorance and closed-mindedness based solely on nostalgia. Augie Doggy and Doggy Daddy wasn't created to make a statement. It was simply created to adapt to the changing media landscape of animation distribution. It's comfort food television. It's not Steamboat Willie or anything. But also, if you really love that show and shows like it from the time, don't let me saying that color your opinion of me or the show in any way. It doesn't matter if it's on a billboard or if it's hanging in the Louvre. If it speaks to you, if it's important to you, that's what makes it meaningful. And that's what's beautiful about Boomerang. Let me just say, I don't think shows like the Flintstones are all that good, and I don't think it stands the test of time the way some people would like to say. I think it's a pretty dull show, but I love it, and I watch it all the time, and it's very meaningful to me, and that's because of Boomerang. Boomerang just had this sort of network cohesion that made it impossible to look away or not want to watch. It had some kind of channel flipping magic where you could be scrolling through your TV guide, no idea what to watch, and you could always settle on Boomerang and be satisfied with your choice. Some people like to listen to like white noise or trance music to fall asleep. but you could just put on an endless loop of Boomerang bumpers and commercials, and that would be perfect for me. I'd be the most comfortable just feeding on that weaponized nostalgia. It's weird because it is nostalgia, and nostalgia has become sort of a dirty word associated with brand manipulation and memory exploitation, but there was nothing manipulative about how Boomerang used it. It was very pure and wholesome and inviting. I mean, it made me as a child feel nostalgic for these cartoons I wasn't even alive to experience. It wasn't trying to exclude me because I didn't see Rocky and Bullwinkle first run and break the knobs off my television sets like all the other kids born in the 60s. So it wasn't a weird gatekeeping platform, but it also wasn't a network that watered down its shows and intellectual properties to make them somehow more accessible for a younger audience. It simply was what it was, and what it was a shared collective television experience that transcended generations. And it didn't bother me when the network started adding shows from the 90s like Dexter's Lab or Powerpuff Girls or Johnny Bravo to its programming schedule. That was an evolution that was inevitable. The programming executives that were picking their favorite shows aged out, and now the new generation was sharing their favorite childhood shows without replacing what came before it. Meanwhile, the branding remained the same because it shouldn't need to change. From 2000 to 2015, Boomerang helped it all come back to you. Its framing device helped cement that. And it was fun while it lasted. So here's why it's bad now. On January 19th, 2015, Boomerang underwent a massive channel rebrand. I don't remember if I discovered it that day or sometime later, but I remember the first time I watched Boomerang after that rebrand, I felt hollow and upset. It might seem weird to place that much importance on a TV network, especially in a day and age where traditional television isn't even something most people watch anymore, but Boomerang as it was a fixture in my life and many other people's lives for 15 years. To me, it felt like the comfy living room rug had been ripped out from under me and I landed face first onto the cold, hard concrete of adulthood. It sounds hyperbolic and a little lame, but 2015 was a big transition year for me. I went off to college and that really didn't go super well. And it wouldn't have helped my life tremendously to have it there or anything, but to not have my TV comfort food and nostalgia hug waiting for me whenever I wanted to turn to it was, well, a bummer. So the network changed. Gone were all the bumpers with the catchy music and cartoon toys. Gone was the big blue bee that would Boomerang. Gone was It's All Coming Back to You. And gone was most of the programming that Boomerang identified itself by for its entire broadcasting life up to that point. I mean, sure, Tom and Jerry and the original Scooby-Doo and the Smurfs would play for like 2 hours at 10 in the morning, but besides that, the network mostly became overflow for Cartoon Network's original programming that wasn't quite as popular as Teen Titans Go. The new branding of Boomerang was actually totally identical to that of the Cartoon Network rebrand that launched around the same time. So now Boomerang was fully relegated to being just Cartoon Network 2. The nostalgia-ridden Boomerang still somewhat exists, I suppose. The backlog of classic cartoons is still owned by Turner, but now it's on an app, much of it behind a paywall. At that point, you might as well just fully rebrand Boomerang as Cartoon Network 2. I mean, the name is effectively meaningless at this point. Boomerang's come back to you. What's coming back to you now? An episode of We Bare Bears that first aired a week ago? And not only that, but that episode of We Bare Bears, an HD 16:9 show, would air in letterboxed 4:3 standard definition. Up until recently, there was no widescreen HD feed for Boomerang, and even then, most providers don't offer it yet. It wasn't a big deal when it was just airing old cartoons produced in standard definition and full screen, but now that most of their programming is meant to be viewed in 1080p HD, it just makes for a generally unpleasant viewing experience on top of everything else. Another thing that kind of sucks was the addition of commercials. It happened shortly before the rebrand, and it didn't totally kill the feeling of the network then, but it was a little strange to have this premium cable network that wasn't obligated to advertise to make money, this channel that was comfortable keeping you cozy and entertained for literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, now having breaks, suddenly breaking that up to try and sell you stuff, to sell children's stuff. I know other kids' networks have commercials, but when they were added to Boomerang, it just never sat right with me for some reason. Maybe it was just me not wanting any substantial change. But that's kind of the point here, isn't it? In 2015, Boomerang changed. It didn't evolve. It started with a very clear mission statement. It's all coming back to you. And over time, programming evolved slightly, changing just enough to keep things interesting without betraying the point of it all. But Turner decided to make a big change. to, quote, grow Boomerang into a second flagship on par with Cartoon Network. But it doesn't really feel like it's grown. If anything, it feels like the programming has shrunk in variety. I mean, the only programming block that still exists in any form on Boomerang is Boomerang Theater, and that just means they're showing a movie. In its current state, there's no real draw to watching Boomerang anymore. It once was a network for everyone, a rarity in television. Any age, any demographic, any person could just sit down and watch Boomerang and be comfortable. God, I must sound so stupid that as a fully grown adult I'm complaining that I can't enjoy a children's entertainment network anymore. But if that's how you feel about it, all I have to say is, you weren't there. You don't get it. And unfortunately, there's no real alternative for Boomerang out there. So, I made my own Boomerang. And it's so comfortable. Boomerang. It's all coming back to me.
Boomerang from Cartoon Network.
Thanks for watching my dumb video. Jeez. Thanks for watching my dumb video. I hope you liked it. If you did, consider subscribing if you want. You don't have to. Also, you could check out, I made a video last time about Knights of the Old Republic and the potential sequel / reboot of that. I think it's pretty good. But yeah, leave a comment. I don't know. Is that what people say? I don't know how to end these.